Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Blazor e-commerce series. Our big goal for today is this little thing here. We have a select box with different kinds of options. Now a request was to add product specifics to the products so that we can choose some kind of specific for our purchase. And in this case, I just called it editions. Now this is, or you can see different editions here for that book, a paperback, ebook, or an audiobook. You could also call this format, or in case of a video game, for instance, it's rather a platform, but still I'm calling this editions, as you can see in a minute. And this is what we want to do. And in essence, that's a many-to-many relationship in our database, because many products can have many different editions. Now we could add more to this. We could make this a bit bigger, implement more stuff. In essence, we could derive from the product class and create a class books or book and a class video game and so on. And then specifically call this platform, or for shoes, for instance, we could add a size and a color. But long story short, let's just use editions here. And again, I already implemented that, but I will discard all the changes in a second, and then we will do this together. But real quick, as always, thank you so much for the growing coffee club. This really means a lot to me, so thank you very much for supporting me and this channel. This is just amazing. And if you want to support this as well, maybe consider buying me a coffee. The link is in the video description, or at least please like and subscribe so that I will be motivated to make more videos like this one. And apart from that, from this series, I want to make an online course, a more comprehensive and in particular structured and not that chaotic online course. So if you want to get early access to this thing, then maybe consider subscribing to my newsletter. I promise I won't spam you every single day. At max, I send an email maybe once a week, but it's rather once a month. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's go back to Visual Studio. And you can see that here are a bunch of changes, but let me just discard everything. And we can do this like that. Undo changes. Yes. And then this should be it. Maybe also delete everything. I should want to delete the select files. Yes, I am sure. And we do the same thing here. We just delete the database. And this should still work then when we add new migrations. So I hope this is working here. Close existing connections. I think this is a good checkbox that we should select, and now this is gone. This is the .NET RPG database, another one of my projects or online courses. If you want to have a look, maybe check out the info card. Okay, but this is not the thing we want to do today. Today we want to add additions to our products or product specifics, something like that. Before we get into that, I want to fix the product here real quick, because our date times are not nullable and I want to make them nullable. So we just add the question mark here, and after that we also change the seeding and then add another migration. So first we made them nullable, and then I want to change the seeding, because otherwise every single time we add a new migration, the date is changed as well because of the date time now here. So we made them nullable already, and then let's go to the data context, and for every product here we add a date. So date created is new date time 2021 now. Happy New Year, by the way, even though you're watching that way later, I don't know. So we added the date created, and we do this for the other products as well. this one, and all the others, of course. That should be it. And now the next step should be to add a new migration. So we go to the package manager console and say .NET ef migrations add product date fix, for instance. Okay, now that's correct. Let's have a look at the new file here. And here you can see, you should be able to see that the column is altered. It's now nullable. Date created and the date updated. That's nice. And the data is also updated. Okay. Let's just run this with .NET ef database update. Now remember, I deleted the whole database, so it should be recreated with the proper data. Done. Okay, let's have a look. We refresh the whole thing here, and now we see the Blazing Shop database with the tables. There they are. We've got the products with the columns now, and these are nullable, and the categories as well. Let's zoom out and have a look at the data. There's our data. Date created now is correct, 1st of January of 2021, and date updated is null. Beautiful. And regarding the categories, we also see the categories here. Okay, now music is missing, but well, that's not that important, I guess. All right, so this works. We fixed our product, and now the next thing already is the product specifics, or as I call it, the editions. And for that, we create a new class down here in the shared project. We add a class, and we call this edition. Simple as that. And this thing is public, of course, and it gets some properties, and I want to give them an ID. I want to give them a name, just string name. And also now for the relationship, the many-to-many relationship, every edition can have a list of products. So this is our products property here. And although this is not necessary, I still want to add them to the data context. Entity Framework would create the table by itself because of the relationship that will exist. But still, let me add this to the data context. That way we can make sure how this table is called, because I think that Entity Framework automatically will call this table edition and not editions, for instance. So let's just add it to the data context. Up here, we add a new DB set of type edition, and we call this editions, like that. All right, and then the next step already is to add the editions list to the product class, and that's how we complete this many-to-many relationship. So maybe up here we add list edition editions, and we are already done. Quick recap. We have our editions with an ID, a name, and a list of products. And on the other end, the product gets a list of editions, and we also added the editions as DB set to the data context and called the table then that will be created by Entity Framework also editions. Okay, and now we add a new migration again with .NET ef migrations add editions. And now with that, something very important and new and I think also exciting thing happens. Entity Framework will create a mapping table by itself. So Entity Framework Core, I have to mention that. That's now Entity Framework Core 5 that will create a mapping table for the relationship between products and editions by itself. Before, meaning with .NET Core 3.1, this had to be done manually. We had to do this manually. So now this is not the case anymore, and you will see that in the migrations file here, there's the editions table that will be created, and here you can see the table edition product, and this is the mapping table. As you can see here, it will consist of a column editions ID and products ID, and here you can also see the foreign keys for the relationships. Very important thing, and with that I would say we can update the database. One side note, maybe you see that now regarding the seeding, the date will not change in the products. This was the case in the last episodes. Now it is not because of our fix. But the most important thing here is this mapping table and of course the editions table. And this we can see in a second. We just update the database and then we should see this table in the SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, build succeeded and done. And now when we refresh the database, we see the editions table here with the columns ID and name, and now also edition product with the column editions ID and products ID. Isn't that nice? So this already works. And I think the next step now is to seed the data already, so we can add then the select or the drop down component and see some data in the books and the video games. So to do that, we are already, no, we're not already at the data context. We have to go to the data context. We have this whole bunch of products here and the categories. And let me just have a look. Has data, that's the bracket here. Yeah, I was already at the correct place. Now first the additions. This is simple. We already did something like that with the categories and the products. So model builder, entity addition, and then has data. And for that, let's say we add a new edition with ID 1 and the name is paperback. And let me copy this now. Come on, copy. Oh, Jesus. Like that. And 3 more times. So we've got the ID 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I just added some additions for books and video games here. Of course, you can add whatever you want here. So we've got the paperback, we got the ebook, also the audiobook, and then regarding the platforms for the games, we've got PC, PlayStation, and also the Xbox. Again, there are more comprehensive ways, maybe even better ways, of course, to do this by deriving from the product class, and then we have product specifics for books, for games, for, I don't know, movies, shoes, t-shirts, and so on. But to keep things simple here, I hope you get the idea. This is how you can do this. Okay, and now it's getting interesting. We've got the editions seeded, but now we also want to add some relations, right? So we want to see some books that are available as paperback, ebook, and so on, and also games that are available as or for the PC and the PlayStation and the Xbox. And for that, let's have a look again. We see this thing here, edition product. This is an important name for us because this is the created table, and this is also a so-called shared type entity, and we will use this shared type entity for the data seeding. So what we have to do, we first have to open the correct file, and then model builder, and then shared type entity, and this is a dictionary of type string and then object, and the string here is edition product. This is the shared type entity, and this thing now has also data, of course. Not property, has data, like that, and now we can add the relationships, and these are objects that look like this. We have the editions ID, which is 1 for instance, and the products ID, which is in this specific case also 1. Again, let's have a look here. Editions, this table creates the columns editions ID and also products ID. All right. Okay, now let's go back. And this is what we want to add here. So we've got the editions ID and the products ID, and I want to add some more. So we've got the editions ID 1 and 1 for the product. The first, or the product with the ID 1 is a book. Then we add for the first book also the editions 2 and 3. Then maybe for another book with ID 2, we say the editions here that are available are only 1 and 2, so paperback and ebook. And then let's say one more product, we have a video game with the ID 7, and this is available for PC and for the PlayStation and also for the Xbox. That's the correct one. Okay, and now these are the relations, and with that I'd say we add another migration. I wanted to format this, okay, and let's just do that. We add a migration called edition seeding, and this is just for our data, right? So we added the relationships. Build has already been succeeded, and now, well, let's have a look first at the file that has been created. Edition seeding, there it is. Here you can see we insert some data. These are our available editions, and also here the relationships. That's it already. So let's just update the database now and then have a look at the SQL Server Management Studio. And then we will move on with some implementations to actually receive the editions, because we have to add some to the product service and then of course to the client for the select dropdown. But first, let's have a look at the SQL Server Management Studio now. We refresh this again, and now I just open the editions table. Here they are, and we also have the edition product table, and here we've got our relationships. Great, so this already works. But now the problem is, let's just run the application, and then we will see that we won't get the editions from the products. Open on the other screen. So here we are. Let's close this one and open the console again. And now here in the network tab, you can see the products, the first book, and regarding the editions, this is null. Now, why is that? Well, in essence, we just have to tell Entity Framework to include the editions here, because that is a relationship and they are not loaded by default. So we have to specifically tell Entity Framework or our application in essence to load them. It's the same with the details of a product. You can see here that the additions are null. And I would say that only when we get a single product, we want to load the additions. It's not really necessary here. You can do that, of course, as well. But let's just change that here. Now to do this, we go to the product service. There it is, and here we have the method getProduct, and you can already see here with products first to default with the given ID, we just want to get this one specific product, and now we have to include the additions, and this is simply done with the include function. And with this lambda expression here, we just say from the product P, we want to add the additions or load the additions. Save this now, it is rebuilding. And when the app has been reloaded, we should see an error. Now, why do we get an error? Let's have a look. We don't get a response. Console is telling us that there's a 500 internal server error. And here in the console, we see a big wall, something with a JSON serialization. And we already got this in another episode. A possible object cycle was detected. Now that's the problem, of course, with the many-to-many relationship, right? We have a product that has additions. The addition has a list of products. The product has a list of additions. The addition has a list of products, and so on. So the JSON serializer of .NET, of the .NET framework, wants to get the additions of the products, and the additions then want to get the products, and then the products want to get... You get the idea. There's a really easy fix for that, and this would be the attribute JSON ignore, and we just add it here on top of the products property, because when we load the additions, we don't really need the products again of every addition, right? So we just add JSON ignore, and maybe we also have to add the new using directive for system text JSON serialization. Save this again, and the app should be rebuilt now. This doesn't change anything with the database, so we don't have to add another migration for that. Let's have a look. Okay, now it has been rebuilded, so it has been rebuilt, right? And already reloaded, we don't get an error now. And when we have a look here, we now see the additions. So that was an easy fix. Another way, just as a side note, how you could do that is to use data transfer objects, meaning that we won't use the actual model addition. We will use some kind of other model, a so-called data transfer object, where we then see or can add any kind of property we want and then map the properties of the models to these data transfer objects, and then we won't get the cycle problem. But anyways, we are receiving the actual models here, the product model and the addition model, and that's why we get this cycle problem, the cycle issue here with the JSON serialization. But with the JSON ignore attribute, we can fix this real quick. Other ways would be to maybe use the Newtonsoft JSON serializer and then configure something with or within the startup CS file. But you really don't have to do this. Either use data transfer objects, maybe we will do this later in that series, or just use the JSON ignore attribute. Anyways, we receive the additions here. And as you can see, when we just go to the books, we don't get them, and this is exactly what we want. We don't see the additions here. These are null. And regarding the video games in Half-Life 2, we also have additions, which are the platforms, in this case, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And regarding the books, also, apart from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we have the book Ready Player One. And here we also added some additions, paperback and ebook. And the third book here doesn't have any additions. It's an empty array in this case. Okay. And now the last step would be to modify the client to see the select box. And this is straightforward, I'd say. We have to go to the product details razor file. Product details. There it is. And now maybe after the product description, we add a select box, and first we add an if condition, because only when we've got additions we want to see this drop down. So if product additions is not null and product additions count is greater than 0, we add a div, maybe. Got a div with the class provided by Bootstrap form group, and then we add this select component here with the class form control, and then we use it for each for the option tag. So for every addition in product additions, we add option and then addition name. And that should be it. And now please note, this is a default HTML select tag. There's also the input select component provided by Blazor itself, or by the .NET framework in this case. And we did not set any IDs here. Of course, when we want to make this purchase, we would have to set an ID here for the select dropdown and for the options, of course. But we will do this maybe in the next episode. Here I just want to show you the many-to-many relationship and how to show the available options on the client. And I think this should have been restarted again. Yes, it has been restarted. And let's see. Yeah, it already works. It's great how fast this is. So we've got our additions. Already works pretty fast, this whole thing. And here we've got the platforms, and for the other book we've got the 2 editions, paperback and ebook, and that is it already. I hope this was helpful, and it was again a really short, well, not really short, but a shorter episode than usual. Maybe the next one will be longer. If you have some requests, please write them down in the comments. I've got an idea of using local storage and toast notifications or pop-up notifications in the next one, because I think the next step should be to actually make use of the add to cart button and then see your orders and save them in the local storage maybe, and show some notifications like this book or this product has been added to your cart, something like that. And then in this specific case, it would make sense, of course, to also add the IDs of the additions here, so that we really see what the customer wants to buy. Yep, that's it. Thank you very much again to all my supporters. Again, if you want to buy me a coffee as well, please check out the link in the video description. Don't forget to like the video, press the like button if you learned something, and maybe even subscribe to my channel. It does make a difference. And don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified as soon as a new video has been uploaded. We've got a newsletter here where you can subscribe if you want to get the early access to any upcoming online course in essence, but the very next one would be this e-commerce course here. And apart from that, if you already want to dive deeper into Blazor WebAssembly, please have a look at the Blazor WebAssembly Full Stack Bootcamp, an online course I created where we built an online browser game where users can register. We're using JSON Web Tokens for authentication, and then you can build some units, create your army and then fight against other users to climb the leaderboard and become the best warrior of them all. If you wanna have a look into that, check out the info card for the 2-hour preview here on YouTube, or check out the link in the video description for the full course on Udemy. And apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I see you next time.